field service organizations. We've got 7 key areas where we can do that in, and we got a lot to go over. So I'm going to get right to it. I do want to just briefly introduce myself first, though. So for those of you that I haven't had the pleasure of working with yet, hello, I'm Bill McGibony. I'm a consulting manager on our customer engagement practice here at Velosio. And I've been implementing CRM systems for a little over 15 years. At the end of the day, my goal is just to make sure that our customers are successful with using technology to achieve their goals. And feel free to connect with me. There's my email, my LinkedIn. Would be happy to have any follow-up conversations if you have any questions that we're not able to get to on today's session. So just a little bit more about Velosio too. There are several hundred of us working with thousands of clients across a variety of industries. We really support the entire Microsoft ecosystem. So quick look at what that encompasses here. It could be Dynamics, which is obviously our focus for today. We also do work with the cloud and Office 365, just about anything else related to that. Under Power Platform, you'll see some of the areas that have a little bit more of a direct impact on the field service application, things like Power BI, Power Automate, Power Apps. Those are things that we can integrate with field service, and we can also work with you to help integrate with other third parties that aren't listed on this slide. So that way we're able to really consider your entire technology stack end to end. And when it comes to field service specifically, one thing that really sets us apart here at Velosio is we actually have industry experience. Some of the consultants on the team have actually led their own field service organizations, and so we really understand the challenges that our field service customers are going through on a day-to-day basis. It's really at the core of what we do on our customer engagement team here, and we approach it knowing that it's at the core of what you do, right? So your field service system is really a mission critical application. That's what your business runs on, so we don't take that lightly by any means. So that's just a little bit about myself and our background for context. But let's get to those 7 ways that you can increase customer satisfaction. So if you've got a field service organization, you've got technicians or representatives, even salespeople, whoever it is that's out in the field actually providing service, you're visiting your customers' locations, you are installing assets, you're servicing assets, providing maintenance, scheduling jobs, scheduling work orders. There's a lot that goes into that, and there's a lot that we can be doing to make sure that our customers are satisfied and make sure that they just love continuing to work with you. And that's really an important topic because more and more, number one, customers are just going to expect this level of service. Some of the things that we'll talk about today, maybe not everyone's doing all of them, but the reality is that there are organizations that are doing them, and those organizations are setting a high bar for the rest of us. So it's important to keep our ear to the ground when it comes to making sure that we're on top of what these best practices are. So that's what I'm hoping to go through with you. Number 2 is, if your customers aren't getting this level of service that they're expecting from you, more and more they have options to go elsewhere. So obviously we want to do what we can to prevent that. And the reality is it's just a lot more expensive to go out and find a net new logo than it is to just retain your existing customers. So, the things that we're talking about today really are going to be able to both save you money and drive revenue. So let's get to that list of 7 things that I want to talk about today. Number 1, probably no surprise, because in the customer satisfaction, customer success world, communication really is key. I mean, that's half the battle, is providing efficient, effective, timely communications. So I'm going to dig into each of these. When we talk about enhancing communications, what I mean really is providing updates on the service early and often. Whatever it is that you're doing for them, you want to reach out and let them know, when it's scheduled, when your technician is on the way. If you're hitting, traffic and you need to adjust your estimated time of arrival, let the customer know. I mean, really, you can't over communicate in today's world. Just for instance, I'm based out of Florida, and if my air conditioner ever goes out, and I know a technician is going to be coming over, I'm not going to get mad if they're continuing to send me updates. There really is no way to over communicate. So communicate as much as you can, and I get that that is easier said than done. If your technician's stuck in traffic, they're not going to pull over and send out an update to the customer manually. So the way that we can really do well in this area is to automate as much of it as we can. So anytime there is an ETA update, when we're starting the travel process to visit the customer, those should be automated notifications that get triggered just based off of the fact that there's been a status change to our work orders. So those are things that can be automated, so it's not a manual process, and that's going to make it scalable as well. As you do more and more work orders with more and more technicians, you can stay on top of that. Another thing when it comes to enhancing communications is just implementing multiple channels. So giving your customers that option of using not just phone, but also email, chat, SMS. And this is for both inbound and outbound. So if they want to reach out to you, maybe they have an issue that they need to report, it's nice to let them pick up a phone and call someone, right? Not everyone's going to love doing that, though. Sometimes they might want to go through a chat, a chat session on your website instead. I know personally, sometimes I'll have an issue with customer service. I'll go on the website. If I can chat and get an answer to my problem right there without even having to pick up a phone, great, that's a win. There are other people or even other situations where, I'd rather pick up a phone. I've got something that's a little bit more complicated. I want to make sure I'm talking to someone. So just giving your customers that choice is going to go a long way to making sure that they're happy with the service that you're providing. Another thing that we can be doing here is, and this really relates to the last point about giving customers that flexibility of how they reach out to you. When it comes to scheduling appointments, there are ways to actually let them self-schedule those appointments through an online portal. And for this one, I'm not going to get too deep into the product today or any kind of technology, but I do have a screenshot on that particular point, just because I think having the visual will help drive that home. This idea that we can have a self-service portal that our customers are going to on their own to schedule that work order. That makes their lives easier, right? Especially if they're dealing with some kind of a reactive situation. So in the screenshot we're looking at here, I've got an issue with my espresso machine. I've selected my product. I've selected my service type, and I can see real time what the technician's availability is. And I can be looking at a single technician. It can be looking at a group of technicians. It's all on how we set that up. But if this is an emergency with my espresso machine, if it's on fire and I need someone there right away, last thing I'm going to want to deal with is another hurdle, something that's going to make it that much harder for me to be able to get that appointment booked. So again, it's just all about making our customers' lives easier. If we can give them this option, which you can see is also optimized for a mobile device as well. Again, it's just making it that much easier on them. So that's number one. Number two is providing timely service. So again, probably not earth-shattering news. If we want to provide good service, we want to do it quickly. So it might sound like a no-brainer, but in reality, scheduling appointments within reasonable timeframes can be very difficult to get right. If someone does call in with an emergency, that might go to someone who works in a dispatch type of role, who's going to need to know where all of our technicians are. If we've got a fleet of technicians or reps that are out in the fields, knowing what they're doing right now and how quickly they can get to this next job, it's going to rely on a lot of information. I need to know who's available, what their skill sets are, where are they. With that information, then I can set expectations around when we can reasonably get out there. And I can be very specific too. If I'm looking at their schedule, I know they're going to be wrapping up their current job within the next hour. They've got nothing planned after that. Great. Here's your time frame. So a lot better than having to say, okay, we've logged your issue. We can get out there sometime next week, right? We want to be as specific as we can, and having a system that's going to support that from a scheduling perspective is going to go a long way. Next up is automating repetitive tasks to minimize overhead. So what I mean is basically is reducing time wherever we can on those things that are just admin tasks, things that are taking time away from a technician doing what they do best, which is being out there and providing service. So if it's paperwork that needs to be filled out after a job, how can we turn that into a standard process where they just need to, couple clicks on their phone, send that paperwork or that invoice over to someone in an office who can take it from there and run with it. Just make it that much easier for a technician to do things like that. Maybe it's closing down a job or completing some kind of form. Maybe it's requesting an order for a part. If we're missing a part and I need to place an order for it, make it as easy as possible for that to happen so that the technician can move on. And what that's going to allow you to do, it could be in little ways, but over time, you might be able to fit in 5 jobs in a day instead of 4. And that can have a real impact on how quickly we're able to provide service to our customers. Next up is optimizing our resource schedules. So I use that terminology because there is a feature actually part of Dynamics 365 field service that is called specifically resource scheduling optimization. And this is an example of a very highly optimized schedule. We're looking at technicians along the left. We're looking at their schedules. You can just see one work order after another. We know how long each of those work orders is expected to take because we know what type of incident it is. We know the technician's skill sets, what they can and can't do. We know their level of expertise. We know where they're located. We know what routes they're assigned to. So there's a lot of variables that factor into this. And when you've got a big backlog of jobs to get through, figuring out who can do what and when really is, it's like a puzzle. And so what this resource scheduling optimization feature is going to allow us to do is introduce some pretty complex algorithms to figure out the best way to do that. When should we be scheduling each of these technicians? What should they be working on? And make sure that we're really maximizing how quickly we can get out to visit our customers. So number 3 on the list, moving right along, support your technicians. So what I mean by that, basically in this, this has to do essentially with training. What we don't want to do, I'll put it this way, we don't want to just hire technicians and then say to them, okay, you claim you're the expert on this, service. Good luck. Go off and do what you need to do. We really want to provide support. We want to get them ongoing training, not just on industry skills like the hard skills around what to do when a certain type of asset breaks, but also just general soft skills on providing good customer service. How can we really be excellent, not just from a perspective of actually completing the job, but exceeding expectations while we're doing that. So make that an ongoing part of your culture, really. Implement technology that standardizes processes. So the key is really build those processes into the system that you're using. So your tech can open up a work order, and then depending on the type of incident, just see right there, here's step 1, here's step 2, here's step 3. Make it, as easy as possible for them to have the tools right in front of them so that they know what they're doing. Right? That way, we're not just throwing them into the wild. We're giving them very clear direction on what it is that we expect them to do while they're completing a work order. We need to make sure we've got the right technician assigned to the right job. So that goes back to that schedule board that we were just seeing on the previous slide. If a work order comes in for a highly complex asset, something that's a critical situation, maybe it's an especially important customer, that's really going to rule out which technicians we can use. So let's make sure that we know what the job is and then figure out who's best suited for it. All right. And, that process of figuring out who should be assigned to a job. Right now, if your dispatch is doing that manually, that's a lot to remember each time. If there's a high pressure situation, figuring out, okay, who knows what and where are they? It's difficult for people individually to just have that institutional knowledge to be able to work quickly in an environment like that. So that's where we can have the system actually factor those things in and just proactively suggest the right technician for the job. And then lastly on this one, we can also help our technicians by offering knowledge-based solutions. So if they're on site and they're up against maybe a tricky work order, something that is challenging that they don't see every day. Well, maybe someone else at our company has fixed this before or something very similar. So let's let them tap into that organizational knowledge. We can build up a knowledge base. What we're looking at here is a screenshot of a technician's mobile device who is actually looking up a knowledge article in our knowledge base, an internal knowledge base, could be external as well. But let them actually look up the technical specs in this example and actually link that to the current work order so that they have information right there, right? In the past, they may have been driving around with a trunk full of user manuals or troubleshooting steps. Fortunately, those days are gone. They can just pull it up on their phone, but let's arm them with this information, build up that knowledge base so they're not in a situation where they're having to reinvent the wheel each time they're looking at a job, especially when it's something that we've already addressed in the past. Number 4, enable a true mobile workforce. So what I mean by that is not just making sure your technicians have a mobile app or a tablet. That's the first step, but really use that technology to improve the customer experience. So update your customers with their travel statuses and their estimated arrival time. This goes back to what we were saying earlier about providing regular communications. This sort of thing is possible because the technician can just open up their phone, very quickly indicate, hey, I've started traveling to my site. It knows where I am. It knows where the job site is. So just like that, it's able to provide an ETA that we can provide to the customer. Geofencing capabilities. When you're logging in and out of jobs, this is a concept, this idea of geofencing. If you're not familiar with it, it's the idea that we can look at the GPS coordinates of the technician and the job site and figure out, hey, this technician really is within a range of whatever, call it 100 feet of the job site. We know they're in range. We can make a note of that. We can log it and just really have confidence that we know where they are. It's going to give us that much more accurate and complete of a look at our database and understanding where our technicians are. This is an optional concept. Obviously, there can be other considerations that we want to factor in here, but using this is part of what we mean when we talk about a true mobile workforce, and it's those little things that are going to help us provide excellent customer service. Another really cool thing, this is a little bit high tech as well, but we have this concept of remote assist. You can allow your technicians that are out in the field to collaborate remotely with experts who are back in an office location or just somewhere else. And this is an example of that remote assist technology. A technician can pull up a booking, go into remote assist mode. It's going to allow them to share their view, like literally what they're looking at if they're working on fixing something. Maybe they get stuck, maybe they need a little bit of help. They can share that with another technician. Again, maybe someone who's back in an office. It can use, augmented reality type of technology to really let those two technicians collaborate on the incident. In the past, before we had this technology, that technician might get stuck and just be at a point where they kind of throw up their hands and say, you know what, I need someone else. I'm going to have to go back and do some research, whatever it might be. Now we can actually work together, still have only one person traveling there, but really make sure we're huddling up and bringing all of our organizational knowledge together to see if we can get this issue fixed on that first trip. And fixing your reactive work orders on that first visit is one of the metrics that we want to be measuring in terms of what kind of success or what kind of service are we providing to our customers. So that's definitely a nice goal. And there's even a bonus from a staffing perspective for those of you that are responsible for hiring your workforce. What this means is we can send technicians out into the field, even if they're not necessarily a true expert on everything that we need from our technicians, right? It could be someone who's competent, but if they're not quite expert level, we can still allow them to pull from maybe deeper industry knowledge from someone who's back in an office location. That makes hiring much easier. You don't need someone with 20 years of industry experience if you can just make sure you've got the right people for using this type of collaborative tool. Number 5, go beyond break fix. So there's the concept of agreements, which is basically a way to schedule preventive maintenance. So when I talk about agreements, you might call it a contract, whatever you want to call it. It's this idea that we're going to come out on some recurring schedule and provide preventive maintenance on an asset. It could be something like an air conditioning system, refrigerator, whatever it is, something that needs to be reviewed periodically, tuned up, make sure it's going to continue to work and that we're really being proactive about extending the life of that asset. That's going to give your customer peace of mind, knowing that their asset is in good hands, it's in good shape. They're going to sleep at night knowing, hey, this thing's not potentially on the verge of just dying on me out of nowhere. So that's nice. And then offering suggestions for new products or services. Right? From your perspective, this is an upsell opportunity, but from the customer's perspective, they also might appreciate knowing what else you can offer them, right? If I've got a company coming over for pest control services, for instance, they might say, hey, we just started offering termite protection too. That's not your current package. I might say, hey, that's good to know. Let's go ahead and add that. And all of a sudden, something that I wasn't even necessarily thinking about is now covered. So I'm happy with that. Monitor asset health remotely and proactively using Internet of Things. So this is terminology you may have heard for a couple of years now. If not, it's the idea that the assets that you're servicing can actually connect to the internet and allow you to remotely monitor whatever the health of that asset is. So it could be, a reading of something like, temperature. It could be pressure, voltage, whatever readings we might need to do. And, another kind of simpler example is I've got one of those doorbell cameras, runs on battery, but if that battery ever gets low, I get a notification on my phone. That's kind of a simple example, but that's nice. It's monitoring its own health, and it raises its hand when it's like, hey, there may be a problem here. I need you to jump in and fix that. So we can take that concept and apply it in more complex ways. This is an example of what we call an IoT alert. I won't break down this entire screenshot. It's just to look at essentially something that was generated automatically because a temperature reading on an HVAC unit exceeded a threshold that we set. So the temperature got to 71. We needed to flag something saying, hey, there may be an issue. We can then look at it and decide, do we need to create a case and investigate this? Do we need to go as far as to create a work order, send someone out there to provide some service, or not, right? Either way, the point is we're being proactive. We're not just waiting on something to break and then going out and fixing it. Number 6 is knowing your customers, so providing personalized service. What I mean is, there are ways to make sure that you really know your customers inside and out. Even if you're not literally sending the same technician every time, we can send someone who's got the right information at their fingertips so they can just pull up the background of that customer, see what we've done for them, and really have it feel like personalized service. So, and that relates to this next point too, around reviewing the history of work orders, cases, activities, any of our interactions, especially recent ones. What you don't want to do is have someone show up on a job site and say, hey, so where's your system? And has it been doing this for a while now? Your customer might look at you and say, I mean, you tell me, you're the experts, right? You've worked on our system. You were just out here last week, right? We want to be on top of these things. That's a very different experience from showing up and saying, I'm sorry you're having to deal with this again. I know we made some adjustments last week. Since it's failed again, we're going to actually need to go ahead and replace this part entirely. And really knowing what the scenario is that you're getting yourself into and being able to just address that up front. Analyze asset information in advance of on-site visits. Again, just being prepared, right? And so here's a screenshot of that. This is an example of an asset that has some property readings, kind of similar to the IoT stuff. The idea here is, we're able to see what's been going on with this asset. What are the work orders that have been related to this asset? What have we done for them, right? That's essentially what we want to get to here. Last but not least, number 7 is gathering feedback. So when I talk about gathering feedback, what I mean is, first of all, send surveys. I mean, a relatively easy way to just make sure that you're connecting with your customer afterwards and saying, hey, did we do a good job? Would you use us again? Would you recommend us to other organizations? That's the only way we're really going to know if we're providing good customer service or not, just by going out and asking. But the key is, don't just ask, but actually do something with that information. So that's why it says follow up on the results. There are, improvements that we need to make. Let's go in and make those improvements. Log cases. So what I mean by this is, if there's some issue or potential issue, something that comes up, let's keep track of that. Let's get it logged in a system so that we can have an owner assigned to it, have some accountability, have some the ability to report off of this. What kinds of complaints are coming in? Are we seeing more of them? Like, what are those trends, right? So you've got to measure these things. As they say, if you don't measure it, it doesn't matter. Same thing with this point here about creating reports. If you've got KPIs like the mean time to repair, which is how long is it taking from when an issue is first reported to when we actually repair it. That's usually a pretty key metric. So let's keep track of those things, and let's be able to report off of it, and look at those trends, benchmark against other similar organizations, things like that. And then another thing kind of related to gathering feedback is just can be as simple as collecting an e-signature on a mobile device. This is the kind of thing that, again, this is all about customer service, right? It's those little things that you can do to make your customers' lives as easy as possible. So give them the confidence that you did fully complete the job. Show them, here's my booking. Can you just grab my phone and put in your signature as we're seeing here? That's a lot easier than asking them to go back and sign some paperwork. Maybe it gets lost. Maybe they have to wait for it to be mailed to them. Just before you even leave the job site, ask them for their signature. They'll put it in. You're on your way. Just one more way of going paperless, right? So it's all those things put together that's going to really give us an excellent customer experience. So here's one last look at that list of 7 key areas for increasing customer satisfaction in a field service organization. Just quickly, it's enhance communication, provide timely service, support your technicians, enable a true mobile workforce, go beyond break fix, know your customers, and gather feedback. And there you have it, folks. So hopefully you got something out of this. If there are any questions in the chat, I will take those now. Otherwise, thank you again for joining. Really appreciate your time today.
Awesome. Well, thanks for all that great information, Bill. Looks like we have a question in here. So the first question is, can customers choose which method of communication we use to reach them?
Yes. So in other words, I think what the question is talking about here is, can they dictate if we're going to reach out to them, whether we're calling via phone or email, SMS, that sort of thing. We have done that sort of thing for some of our customers. Takes a little bit of configuration and personalization, but definitely doable. We can make sure that for each contact we keep track of. It can even be specific to certain situations. Like sometimes if it's not an emergency, I just want you to email me. But if it is an emergency, I need you to call. We can give that degree of flexibility depending on how deep you want to get with it. But yeah, that's a great point. It's a good question.
Great. Well, it looks like that is all the questions we have for today. So again, thank you everyone for attending, and Bill, thanks for all the information. Like Bill mentioned, if you have any questions, reach out to Bill, reach out to us here at Velosio. And with that, we'll see you at the next webinar. Thanks.
Thanks.